If a lawyer is taken to prison, do you get to defend yourself?
The right to defend yourself is available to anybody, not just lawyers. Anybody can defend themselves, but I would always discourage defending yourself because you need somebody to represent you with a clear mind, with a strategy and without any emotions. When you're in remand prison, you are full of emotions. You're in a place where people in prison basically refer to prison as a graveyard, because once you're there, you're in four walls. People just come visit you, look at you, and go. It's like visiting a graveyard and saying, "Hello, uncle. We miss you." So you go through a lot of emotional trauma. Your mental health status is not that great. It also depends on how you're taking it. So, and then representing yourself, I would never advise anybody to do that, even if you're a lawyer. However, when I was there, I was doing a lot of research that would help my lawyers represent me probably. But I would never do that.
What were you accused of, and how did you get over it?
So I was accused of actually withdrawing money from my account, money that belonged to somebody else. But unfortunately, the branch manager at the bank had forged an email that showed that I gave instructions to withdraw that money. It took 14 months for the police to realize that that email was fake. So when they realized that the email was fake, they released me and said, "We're really sorry. You had to go for a 14-month vacation, but now you need to go home."
And do you think, obviously not talk about the case or anything, but do you think this is due to technology? For example, if it was in the Western world, it would have been easier to realize that this was just a forgery that was made?
I think it has a lot to do with many things. Unfortunately, we live in a country where attention to detail is not the first priority. We miss out on a lot of these details. Our police, our institutions are overworked, overwhelmed. We don't have many people that have that expertise. So we're still understaffed in every area in the government as well. We have really good people. I've worked with amazing investigators in the police, but you have to get lucky to get that one smart investigator. So technology does play a role, yes, but also, that attention to detail thing is unfortunately lacking in most people around us in this country, and that is what was the challenge. But also, unfortunately, in my case, there were certain personal interferences from people that I cannot disclose, that sort of said he's better off in there relaxing.
And when it comes down to advice, you just gave advice of not representing yourself. I want to ask, what is the best advice you've ever received, and how did that impact you?
So the best advice that I've ever received is that you don't need experience to overcome challenges. Through overcoming challenges, you get experience. And this was an advice that was given to me when I was starting my first business, my law firm, because I was 25 years old and I asked this man who was very experienced, and I said, aren't people going to laugh at me and say, "What are you doing? You're 25 years old, you've never worked at a law firm, you're out there wanting to practice law." And he said, "Listen, you get experiences through challenges. So yes, you will fail, you will face a lot of challenges, but you will learn and get experience." So even when I went for my first court case, I didn't know nothing, and I lost it, and but I learned a lot. And my next case, because I learned from the first case, I won the case.
If you could have a conversation with any historical figure who inspired justice or changed, who would it be, and what would you ask them?
Well, one of the biggest inspirations in my life, there are actually three people that I'm very inspired by. Uh, Unfortunately, all three are dead. Uh, but one is Steve Jobs.
Okay.
You know, I always admired how he looked at simplicity, and that's what's inspired me to always be simple and to put things around me simple. Um, Nelson Mandela, um, obviously, because I was in prison like him, and Mahatma Gandhi, because I really liked his resilience on fighting for a cause without using any violence. So I think if I was to have conversations with these people, um, I would probably just ask them, you know, what inspired them, but also what could I do to be better? Because one of my life goals is always to be better, to do better. And I don't believe that somebody is successful already. I think success is a journey, and you're always going to be uh, achieving milestones, and that's how I measure success. It's a journey. I'm not successful. I'm on a journey.
Yeah. And you said you are inspired by Nelson Mandela, and we all know Nelson Mandela was in prison for a lot of years, 27 years, yeah. And you had 14 months. So there's one question I've always wanted to ask: how are days counted in prison? Because I heard that day and night counts as 2 days. Is that just a misconception or is it a reality?
Yes. So they don't count the night. They only count the day. So your day starts at 6 a.m. and it ends at about 4 5 p.m. where you go back into your cell. So they open the cells for you at 6 a.m. where you can move around and talk and chit chat and work out and read books and do whatever you want to do. And then about 4 o'clock, sometimes even 3 o'clock, it depends on their moods. If they're tired of us, they say get in first. Like you put cows and sheep inside. It's like get in, get in, get in. Because you're also counted when you go in.
Yeah.
So that's how. So they don't count the night.
Okay.
So if you're facing, let's say, 1 year in prison, then it could sometimes be just 8 months, like that.
Okay.
But when you're in remand prison, it's different, because being in remand means you're waiting for your fate. You're not convicted yet. There's a difference between somebody being convicted and somebody waiting for his fate in remand prison.
Yeah. And when you're in prison and you're doing some works, do you get paid for those work that you're doing?
So in Tanzania, unfortunately, that doesn't happen. And that is one of the things that, as Utu Kwanza, part of our advocacy, we want to work on, to see that people do get paid. But at the moment, people don't really get paid. So sometimes they would get maybe small allowances. We call them posho. Here and there, or they would get some really good food, because sometimes you get sent to work in certain areas. So let's say if you're in Morogoro and you're asked to work maybe around a hotel, or there are people that do. A lot of prisoners go to Sabasaba grounds to work there. So sometimes they'll get nice food maybe, or some posho here and there. Get a smoke here and there. That's what they benefit.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend a few weeks ago, and he told me that the justice system and the prison system is not there to defend people's rights, because there are a lot of people who are actually not guilty but are still in prison. But the main aim of that is for the government to make money. How true is that?
Unfortunately, there's no truth in that, because the government actually bleeds money when people are in prison, because they have to feed all these people. At the moment, the prisons are actually independent. During the time of the late Magufuli, he said that prisons should not receive money from the government. So a lot of these prisoners are they're self-sustainable. So that's why you would see prisons have farms and mines and this and that. The prisons, for example, in Ukonga, they have a whole like a furniture workshop where they make furniture and they supply to sell those furniture. So they're now self-sustainable. So the government makes no money by having prisoners. It actually bleeds money. The reason why people are in prison, as I said, is because of, and it's not just in Tanzania, it's all over the world. Just being at the wrong place at the wrong time. I'll give you a simple example. One guy was there for a rape case. But basically, unfortunately with Tanzania, because of the economic situation, people rent rooms and they can't rent houses. So this guy had rented a room close to his sister's room, and he visited his sister and he was in the other room. And then his sister's friend was in the other room. And some guys came and they raped the friend. And he was in the other room. This girl unfortunately did not see who raped her because it was dark. And unfortunately, when the police came, the first suspect was this guy because he was in the next room. And he was taken away. So he was there and his bail was open actually. So when he talked to me about it, I felt touched and I was like, okay. And because I'd say alhamdulillah, I was in a good position to help people, then I supported him by paying his bail money in court. And then he was released on bail. I'm not sure what happened to him in future because I was still there. But I know he came a couple of days later bringing me food and drinks, to say thank you. But he had not done anything. I have so many stories of these kind of people. And that's why I say that I was inspired to do what I do. Because I just felt that even if we can't help them come out of the situation, at least we can treat them as human and give them, the best nutrition, the best food, the best healthcare, the best education while they're there.
So coming to the end, in our podcast culture, we started something new that a previous guest will leave a question for the next guest, not knowing who the guest is and you not knowing who left you the question. So the question that was left by the previous guest is, how do we fast track building the gap of understanding between corporate executives and young executive entrepreneurs who are the future of this country, but they are not anywhere near the formal decision making process?
Okay, so I'm trying to understand the question. Is it saying how do we
fast track building the gap of
understanding between
corporate executives and young executive entrepreneurs who are the future of this country?
Okay. So the question is a little bit vague because the word understanding is challenging, but I would say I think to be able to bridge that gap between current corporate executives and young executives is to first of all probably do something that you're doing already, right? I think as Connectors Club you're doing an amazing job, trying to connect people like us to people who are young and people who are aspiring to do better. Yeah. But I think hosting workshops and networking events where you bring in these corporate executives and these young executives and have a dialogue between them, because currently the biggest challenge that those who are already in a certain position have with people who are growing and coming up is there is that demeaning nature to say, because this person is a Gen Z, this person thinks like this and acts like that, why can't they act like I do, who's probably a millennial? So bridging that gap needs to have an open dialogue on what do these young executives want and expect, because they have expectations, but also what do these corporate executives want and expect. That way we will be able to work together, because Gen Zs are right in their space and the millennials and older are also right in their space. They just need to come together and have a dialogue.
I think that's very true. And as you said, we both mostly likes to say this, that you have to bring value to the corporate, and the corporate has to bring value to the young executive.
Yes.
Now, what question would you leave for our next guest? Not knowing who it is, but they have to answer your question.
Okay, that's an interesting one. I think what the next guest could answer is, what do you see as the future of young entrepreneurs in Tanzania?
Thank you very much. Now, guys, that comes to the ending of our podcast, and we had Mr. Shehzada today. We discussed a lot. I personally learned a lot. I'm pretty sure Musa learned a lot when it comes down to partnerships, when it comes down to legal counseling, when it comes down to the prisons, and Utu Kwanza too. And he also said that if you guys want to reach out to him, he's a very simple person. You can reach out if you guys want. I'll provide the number, and Connectors Club will be sure to organize if it's a seminar, so that we can all go learn more and ask him questions, because I'm pretty sure there are other people that had more questions for him, but we did not ask. So I hope you guys join us for our next episode, and thank you very much. Make sure you guys like, comment,